Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I know some folks are still coming in, but I have strong taskmasters for my team, so I want to make sure I get off to a good start so I don't get the hook. Anyway, I'm Karen Johns. I'm the CEO of Net Impact and want to welcome you and everyone who's here for this special twofer because I'm first part of a two-part series. So we'll get started in our section. I also want to do the important work of welcoming some people in the room, but starting with thanking our sponsors, the Estée Lauder Companies and Meta, for making sure this event is possible. I know there's so much going on for this week, so we're always grateful to have those folks in the room. And then we have several hundred more with the sponsorship of Meta on the phone. I'm sorry, on the phone, sure where my brain is, right? On Zoom from our global community. I also thought this would be a nice spot to just do a little bit of setting. In addition to myself and members of the team here, I know there are folks here from Net Impact, but I thought I'd take a moment to talk about, if those of you who don't know what Net Impact is. I do a couple of different definitions of us. One is, in addition to being the largest global network of students and professionals focused on business and impact, we also were that started about 30 years ago. This is actually our 30th year, by a group of young MBA students who had this crazy idea that business could be a force for good. Less crazy now, but back then that was a revolutionary idea. It's now evolved into a global organization. We're actually in every continent except for Antarctica. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a chapter being formed there as we speak. We just welcomed our newest chapter from Nepal that's already formed and going. And this is very much led by students on the ground. And so for those of you who are not yet involved, and we have membership from undergraduates to MBA students to professionals, please visit netimpact.org and sign up. I suspect it's safe to say there's a Net Impact near you, no matter where you are. We also wanted to see if there were any members from the Net Impact community in the room. And if so, I'd just love to see a show of hands, either a student or an alum. Yep, okay, great. Great to see some presence. And as I said, I know there are hundreds, there are dozens, and probably I know we had over 100 people sign up on Zoom, so they're also on the call. Then I also wanted to talk a little bit about what we hope to do today. One of our most important roles at Net Impact is really trying to give our community, particularly our students, a sense of the careers that they are interested in. And one of the lines I have to say about our students is, they just don't want a good job, they want a job that does good. That is sort of the underlying theme of our Net Impact community. And sustainability and careers in climate and sustainability is an underlying passion for so many. And we wanted to give them a chance today to sort of look behind the scene, look behind the curtain, get a sense of what the profession is about. And in this case, the next session showcase young professionals and young people who are in the field. You know, we have one of the largest groups of our medium age is about 18 to 34-year-olds. So we have a lot of young professionals graduating from schools, going into careers. And so you'll get a chance to get a sense of that. But we also wanted them to see what the careers happen. So that's why I'm especially fortunate today to have Al. We've already done the joke, I can just call him Al, so I'll just stick with that. To have Al share his story. Al, as you may know, I'm trying to flip and do this at the same time, is the Vice President of Sustainability at Estée Lauder Companies. And he has a career both in the professional world, but probably like so many professionals who do this well, he also teaches. He's an adjunct professor at Purdue, and he also is an author of several books. I planned to do the full write-up, tell-up of your story, Al, but think we'll just get into it, because I think one of the most important things when we talked, and I think for the students, for the audience who's here, is for you to tell your backstory. I love to call it the origin story of your career path. And I suspect sitting now where you sit in as VP of Sustainability, this is not something you may have even thought about was a career option. So how you got here, what was your aha moment, and then we can get a little bit more into the company and what your current job is.
Okay, great. Lou, can you hear me? Yes, okay, good. Yeah, thank you, Karen, and it's really great to be here. I want to thank Fordham, who's a great partner with Estée Lauder Companies and Net Impact. I really admire what Net Impact does, and I really love working with people who are net impact people because I love the concept of like not just getting a job, just working for a company just to get a paycheck, but making a difference and wanting to work for a company who is really interested in doing the right thing and operating the right way. So kudos to Net Impact and all of you who are members. So yeah, to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got into the field of sustainability. Well, when I first started, the word sustainability didn't mean what it means now, right? It was something totally different. But I'll go all the way back because I know there's students in a room, and sometimes this is encouraging for people who might not completely know like what it is they want to do, right? So when I graduated high school, I remember I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what to major in. So I was undecided major for 2 years. I tried everything. Like I tried business, I tried chemistry, I tried exercise science and music, and I couldn't figure out what to major in. And then I met with a counselor and I took this test and it said, well, you should become a nurse. And back then men didn't really become nurses. So, but then I started thinking, oh, well, it's science-based, right? And I really love the outdoors, which is kind of unusual because I grew up in New Jersey. I'm a Jersey guy through and through. I still live in New Jersey. And my family never really, we didn't do a lot of outdoorsy stuff, but I had an interest in it. I started reading like Outdoor Life magazine and Field and Stream. I taught myself how to fish and everything. So I don't know, I just had a love for the outdoors. And I put two and two together. I'm like, I'm going to major in environmental science. So and I transferred from Seton Hall to Stockton State University in South Jersey. And I still remember the meeting I had with the first counselor. And I'm like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to major on? I'm like, I want to be a forest ranger. And then he looks at me and he goes, well, there aren't many jobs in forestry, so maybe you should go into pollution control. And I'm like, okay. And that's how it all started. I guess that was my aha moment. But then from there, I got recruited to work at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So we were talking about careers in sustainability. There's many paths, right? So I'll get into that a little bit later because my path is not the only way to work into sustainability. But I started through the environmental. So I got a degree in environmental science. My first job was working for the state of New Jersey, where I was a hazardous waste inspector and investigator. And I saw a lot of crazy stuff back in the day. But I'll be honest, I got kind of burnt out with the bureaucracy of working for government. I mean, there's a lot of great people in government, so don't get me wrong if you're working in government. I admire people who work there. I still have people who are lifers that I know who work in the New Jersey DEP. But for me, I got, and I'm like, hey, maybe I can do more good on the inside of a company than as a regulator. So I got this opportunity to take a job at Johnson & Johnson, and I went there and I was leading environmental science for compliance mainly at that point in time. And over time, I wanted to try consulting. I worked, for those of you who are consultants, I admire consultants. I only lasted 1 year as a consultant. Then I got a job opportunity to go back to Johnson & Johnson in corporate headquarters. So I was working for a medical products division. And then I was involved in their auditing program. So it was part of every major company has an environment, health and safety and sustainability auditing program. They have guidelines, and how do you make sure all of your manufacturing and R&D facilities are following these guidelines? You have to do audits, right? So I got to travel all over the world, saw so many different things, and learned so much as an auditor. And I was also a subject matter expert for hazardous waste and remediation. I learned the remediation part from my job as a consultant. And this is another lesson for you guys. During that time, I started noticing companies doing design for the environment, and the one that two that were like really the most nascent and that kind of caught my attention. There was GE Eco Imagination, and then SC Johnson that had this green list, right? They were the first companies that kind of really got into design for the environment. I'm like, you know what? We should have a design for the environment program at Johnson & Johnson too. So I pitched it to my boss, and so this came out of the blue. It's like nothing like what I was doing, but I thought it was pretty important because what we found out is through life cycle assessment, some of the biggest impacts of a company are upstream on the raw materials that you purchase. If you're using agricultural raw materials or minerals, that's where some of the biggest impacts are, not at the factory. So when I first started, it was like, oh, the factory emissions, reducing air and water and waste emissions was really important. And it still is today, but the biggest impacts are like upstream, and even the use of your product and then the end of the life of the product too. So I sold it to my boss at that time, and I partnered with a university professor. And we developed a design for the environment tool, and we traveled all over the world, and we trained R&D professionals and marketers on how to develop more sustainable products. And that's how that became a bigger and bigger part of my job, and it kind of morphed into the field of product stewardship, which is end-to-end product sustainability, looking at like the raw materials that you procure, responsible sourcing, the manufacturing of the product, the use of green chemistry, and the use phase of the product, and then the end of life of the product and the packaging and managing all that. And then to bring it to current days, right? I'm giving you like real speed. This is a really a speed of my work history, but it became my full-time job, where I led product stewardship for Johnson & Johnson, and they had 3 divisions at that time: consumer products, medical devices, and pharmaceuticals. They've since spun off the consumer products, but I reached out through LinkedIn. Hey, how would you like to hear about a vice president of sustainability job at Estée Lauder Companies? And I've said, yeah, sure. And then one thing after another, and it took me to my current role.
Well, first of all, I love that it's a LinkedIn reach out that got him that, right? Which gives all of you out there in the professional development space a hope about that process. But no, first of all, I'm glad that you share the origin story, because one of the things we oftentimes engage young people who are asking us about how they get into the field, that it's rarely a straight path, and particularly for those who are sitting in it after 20, 30 years, many times these ideas or these terms for these roles were not even created. So, the meandering path that you may have thought you took makes perfect sense, that you're ending up where you are. And wanted to dig a little bit. I'll be talking a little bit later about the sort of real critical and I think ambitious, but seems like you are on the path to success, sustainable goals that the company has set, and sort of we'll do that dive. But really wanted to stay a little bit on what advice do you have for young people who are looking to get their first job in sustainability, besides making sure they have a LinkedIn profile, clearly. But, what advice? I think one of the things we find is the idea of how and what the different roles are so diverse that they are learning things in the classroom, and that transition to the world of work is sometimes a little bumpier. So what advice would you give, and any sort of thinking about before they transition, and the steps towards that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think the point you made about there is no like one path, one way, to get in. Like in my role, when we were talking before this panel, and was talking about like when I first started at Estee Lauder, there was only 2 people in the sustainability at that time. Now there's 12 in the corporate center team, which I lead. But we've hired people from various backgrounds too, like business backgrounds only, with sustainability experience, of course, or a master's degree in sustainability, where they had an undergraduate in business and a master's degree. We have some people who have science backgrounds and who work more on like our product side, but there are many different routes to getting into sustainability. So some of the advice I would give you too is like, all right, you don't necessarily have to get a job on the sustainability team. Some of the most obvious advice that I give to students is like, especially today, like there's the hiring. A couple of years ago, it was a white hot field, sustainability. I think it was like the number 1 or number 2, like LinkedIn job postings. Now there's been, a slowdown of it. So my advice is like to get your foot in the door. So we work with people, like I work with people in all aspects of the business. I work with people in finance. I work with people in the supply chain. I work with people, in the law department, and you name it, R&D, so you might have an undergraduate degree in chemistry or in business, take a job in supply chain or take a job in procurement, and like some of our procurement people are working with our suppliers, and some of the stuff they're talking to them about is sustainability, right? So, and most companies will allow you to do what's called stretch assignments. So what I encourage you to do once you get in there, you find out about who is in the sustainability team, and then you make friends with those people, and then you say, hey, is there any way like maybe I can, help out and do a project for you guys? And a lot of companies do that, and a lot of supervisors will allow you to do that, because it's like taking a course. You're learning something new, and then if somebody leaves, maybe you can pop in there, or maybe you just keep on working on your current role, and you just embedding sustainability into that, because one of our goals is really to weave sustainability into the DNA of everything that we do as a company. And one other thing, for those who are still in school, internships, and try to get some experience in sustainability or something related to it.
I know you're particularly committed to interns, and that's part of it. So now I'm glad you shared that point. I also love that you say that there are many paths. And so I think I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the skill sets that you're looking for when you're hiring for your team, and letting people know the different, some of the critical bits. But also I'd love for you to share, because you referenced this, looking ahead, if you can, what you think the top trends will be. You talked about a few years ago where sustainability was, how it is now, and if you could do, maybe do a preview, look ahead, I think that would also be helpful.
Okay. So I think we did a pretty good job of hiring some pretty awesome people. You're going to be hearing from one of them on a panel in a little bit. But what we usually look for, okay, if you're going to be working on a sustainability team, you need to have sustainability experience. So you try to get that experience any which way you can, if it's internships or, like I said, stretch assignments, or anything at all. We look for people who are strong project managers. We look for go-getters. So people who I can't tell you, a lot of people reach out to me through LinkedIn, and they'll ask me, hey, tell me about your career. I share with you guys. It's like this is like a normal thing. Like I'll share with somebody, they'll reach out to me out of the blue, and some of those people actually got jobs at Estée Lauder. I mean, it's not always going to happen, of course. I know, right? Well, we'll be cautious on how many of those we do. We still have to get work done. But networking is like, I mean, that's why you're probably here today, right? It's to network. That's probably why you come to these conferences. But somebody gave me advice once when it comes to getting a job, is like, develop a top 10 organizations that you would like to work in, right? And then get your resume up on their website. Learn as much as you can about them. Reach out to people in the job that you think you might want to have in those organizations, and you'll be surprised. There's a lot of people who will get, like me, who will give you the time of day and actually tell you, hey, how did you get there? That's usually what students ask me. Tell me about your career path. How did you get there? How do I get, the same questions you're asking me too. Now, switching gears on the second part of the question, like, what do I see for the future? So I did mention that, like, sustainability kind of has been it's a little, because of the economy and because of what's going on, coming out of the pandemic, et cetera, it has slowed things down. But there's hope for the future, and this conference has been very hope-filled, a lot of hope-filled messages. But what I see is, like, there's now sustainability, most of the stuff we worked on has been voluntary up until this point. Now there's regulations in Europe that California is requiring you to report greenhouse gas emissions. There's a European Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the Due Diligence Directive. That's going to require companies, like if you're a US-based company in 2026, you're going to have to start reporting. So we're already gearing up for it. But there's probably companies who are not in the space where we are, that they're going to be needing to get some people to help them to do this. I believe that consultants are going to be hiring quite a bit of people to help these companies to be able to fulfill the reporting desire. So now there's regulatory requirements, plus there's just the regular doing the right thing type of stuff that's going to continue to be there.
I also would love for you to give a little bit of a look at how the sustainability, you referenced that you have different sides of the company working on it, but how is it structured within the company, and the different types of roles that is integrated across the field?
Yeah. One of the interview questions that I was given when I took the job at Estée Lauder, I was like, how would you operationalize our strategy? And I had like an 80-page PowerPoint deck of strategy, right? So I had to read it and tell. And I said, well, what I would do is I would set up these work streams along key important areas to drive sustainability in the company and to move it forward. And also, we would develop goals that we would measure ourselves on and our progress on. So the way that we're set up is like I lead a corporate center team of subject matter experts, and we kind of run these work streams in the various parts of the company. And some of the work streams are responsible sourcing. So you could work in procurement and be part of a responsible sourcing team, or just be a buyer who's working with your suppliers on greenhouse gas emissions or other topics. We rate our suppliers on sustainability. So that could be one path. That's one of the ways we do. We have a responsible sourcing work stream. We have a sustainable packaging work stream. So we have people who are in packaging who help to run sustainability issues among all of our brands. And then we also have a building operations work stream, where we work with like real estate. We work with our engineering groups on making all of our spaces more sustainable. We work with our brands. So we have that work stream. We work with our environment, health, and safety teams on making our factories more sustainable, making our R&D centers and distribution centers more sustainable, like using green power or reducing waste and water, those type of things. So the way we're structured also is that we also work very closely. We have a law department that we have to work with. We have finance who works very closely with us. And we even have like a capital for deploying sustainability capital in our factories. That's like it's set aside that our department doles out with the help of our finance team.
Again, showing that it's such a broad based and you can come into it any place. As we get to the last section, I really wanted to pull out the lens a little bit and look at the company. Estée Lauder has announced some really ambitious goals, particularly focused on absolute scope 1 and scope 2 GHG emissions reductions, 50% by 2030. You are focused on driving transformational change in the climate transition plan. And so particularly now that ESG and all those sustainability issues are coming up in terms of ESG aspirations, and now particularly being here at Nest, where this is obviously the topic of conversation, how's the company doing against those goals, and sort of what it is that, we think about with the coming years? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I had mentioned goals, and goals are really important. And when I first started back in 2018, our CEO said he wanted goals like in a very short period of time too. There was an investor day coming up. It was only a couple months, and it's amazing what you could do when a CEO wants something, right? So we developed at that time 11 public-facing goals. We've added some goals over the time. In the climate area, we committed to developing a science-based target, which is connected to the Paris Accord 1.5 degrees C, which we did get that done, and we have a science-based target which we're working towards, which you had mentioned. We also set a goal for our company to be 100% renewable electricity, and also to be carbon neutral for our own emissions. We also, over time, set a goal for all of our fleet vehicles to be electric vehicles. So you mentioned part of it, reducing our scope 1 and 2 emissions, which is the fuel we use and the electricity we use. We have a goal to reduce that by 50% by 2030. The science-based targets at 2030. We are 100% renewable electricity and have been since 2020. The way we do that is by putting solar on some of our factories, by a virtual power purchase agreement, which is a big wind farm that's in Oklahoma, and also by buying renewable electricity from the grid or through RECs, renewable energy credits. So that's how we're 100% renewable electricity. So that's one good thing. We've made some pretty decent progress on our electric vehicles, where our fleet is now, I think, 10% electric vehicles. Next year we should be hopefully 20%. So we've made some pretty good progress. Not many companies can say they're 100% renewable electricity. So we've reduced our emissions, our own emissions that we have control over. And you probably have heard through many of the sessions, if you've attended them, the scope 3 emissions, which is working with all your suppliers, is the toughest nut to crack. So we're making progress there as well, but that is a much more daunting task.
Well, I know we'll get a sense, this is setting us up for the next session that's coming, but I wanted to save a little time to see if there's some questions for the audience. So, okay. I think we'll probably have time for one or two, but we'll start with you. I know we have some students who, do you want me? Yeah, who volunteered to help with coming to you. And if you can just quickly say your name and if you're affiliated with a college or program, say that, and we'll try and sneak a question in. Right here in the blue shirt up front. Oh, okay, great. Okay.
We all work towards being chief sustainability officers at big companies. Is how do you justify these goals to your board and your oh sorry, I forgot. uh yeah, so the question is like, just how do you justify the goals to your executive management team and leadership board, investors, like the people that you report to, like how are they talking about these goals?
Yeah, so you manage what you measure, right? And they get that. And actually, our CEO is the one who actually asked for the goal. So that was like, the fish jumped in the boat, right? Type of thing. But sometimes, when I was at Johnson and Johnson, it was like more of a bottom up when I first started there, as for trying to sell the reasons for these goals. I mean, you look at who are your key stakeholders out there. So for us, our key stakeholders, you mentioned investors. Our investors, when I first started, we had like maybe one or two investors asking about sustainability. Now we have like over 30 meetings a year on sustainability with investors where they're asking all different questions about how you manage this, how you manage that, your climate programs, et cetera. So the other one is our consumers. So our consumers, especially like Gen Z consumers and the emerging consumer, are super interested in sustainability. They're like net impact consumers. They don't want to buy products from a company who's like doesn't care about these things. They want to buy products from a company who cares about these things. So that we have to pay attention to that too. And then there's also our employees, and the best and brightest employees out there want to work for, like, again, the net impact type of person. They want to work for a company who is serious about being a good corporate citizen and, selling a great product, but doing it the right way. So that's, all you get all of the data from the key stakeholders, and then you benchmark your competitors and other leading companies, and you present and you come up with, these are the things that you do a materiality assessment, what's most material to the company in sustainability, and then you set up goals in those key areas. Climate, of course, being one of them, packaging, and we have ingredient goals. We have a whole bunch of different goals.
Thanks, Al. In the back.
Hi, my name is Maya. I'm a recent graduate from Columbia Climate School, and I want to ask today a little bit of advice for some of the other young professionals that are like me and eager to impact change. We hear a lot of the time to be bold, to not give up, to stick true to it, but at the same time, we're also told to start from the ground up and just get our foot in the door. But every time I push for bold initiatives, my foot gets further and further from the door. And I'm finding it really difficult to be in a position where I can catalyze real change. And given that we crossed the 1.5 degree threshold at times this summer, the 2025 goals are about 3 months away and certainly not met, and 2030 is approaching. How do you advise that young professionals position themselves, and how do we deal with the fact that we want to impact change now, but it's really hard to get to that position?
Yeah, I hear you. Well, every organization has its own culture and ways of doing things. So if you're presenting something that's like counterculture, you probably are not going to have that much success. So you got to try to figure out how things get done in the company. And then you have to make a business case. Like, I remember when I met with our CEO, Fabrizio, and, we were talking, like one of my first meetings when I first came on board, and he said, Al, everything's got to have a business case. The business case might be that our consumers are interested in this, right? And, you know, and maybe it's going to cost the company money to deploy, let's say, green power solutions or getting a science-based target like we have. So you have to try to understand how things get done within the organization that you belong to. And then I would look for advocates in there. And one of the things that we try to do on my team is like figure out like who are the key decision makers. And then, you know, you set up one-on-ones with them and you try to flip them in that way. You got to like pre-sell things. Like I remember when I was at Johnson & Johnson, we had a class, we had brought in a salesperson. I'm like, what? We're a sustainability team or EHS team. Why would you need to know how to sell? Because everybody's selling ideas, right? And we had to learn how to sell an idea. And there were some really good concepts that I still think about today when it comes to selling things. But one of the concepts was that this guy was an old salesman, and he said, you know, you have to sell on the concept, not the brand. So he was saying like, you might be trying to sell somebody a Cadillac, but you know, instead you're selling, you sell the Hyundai, you still made the sale and then you build on that, right? So you might, you know, don't expect to get the whole thing, you know, even if you get a small thing and then you build on that would be one of the ways to do that, you know? So hopefully that was helpful advice.
Yes, thank you very much.
I think can we sneak one more in? Yes, right there. I know you had your hand up. Yes.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Sive. I work in climate and sustainability for Arup in Dublin, so a little while away from here. I guess my question to you is, what do you see your role as an individual, but also the role of Estée Lauder more broadly in kind of the international climate movement and advocacy? And are you engaging in kind of the discussions around COP and kind of with your government?
Yeah, so we are very involved in um, encouraging doing our part, right? And encouraging others. So one of the most amazing things that happened over my career, which I gave a kind of snapshot of that, is really what we had had become being called greening the supply chain. So if you think about it, you think about a company like Estee Lauder, and you could look at our own operations, but when it comes to working with our suppliers, we got, I don't know, like 50,000 suppliers. I don't know the exact number, but let's say it's 50,000. But some companies have like 100,000. Think about Walmart. Like that's like one of the amazing things when Walmart started talking about sustainability years ago, and they were our biggest customer when I was at Johnson & Johnson. Yeah, everybody starts paying attention, more attention than what you had anticipated. So we're doing our part no matter what, and getting our suppliers to try to do their part too is part of that. Belonging to organizations that are encouraging this type of work. I mean, the fact that we're here is and talking to all of you and supporting Fordham and that impact on this is one of the ways that we kind of are saying this is an important topic and we should be paying attention to it, and so should other companies be paying attention to it as well. We belong to other organizations, organizations like Sustainable Brands, where we're working with other companies to try to encourage more sustainable thinking and to more climate action. So our government affairs groups work through trade organizations on policies as well. So we're, you know, definitely trying to do our part and encouraging others to do their part.
Well, first of all, I want to have you all join me in thanking Al for sharing both his personal and story. And as I mentioned, we are the lead up to the next panel. So Leanne Statuta, who's the executive director of the Responsible Business Center at Fordham, at Gabelli School of Fordham University, will be coming up with her panel. So I know they'll have as much to share as we did. So thank you all again and enjoy the rest of the session.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Leanne Statuto, and I'm the Executive Director of the Responsible Business Center. We're based at Fordham University, Scabelli School of Business, and it's an honor to be here. I want to just thank Karen and Al. That was such a fantastic way to really kick off this panel here, really having someone really established in their career give advice, and then turning it over to young professionals to really do the same thing, but from an earlier stage in their career. A quick note just about who the RBC is. So the Responsible Business Center is a platform for interdisciplinary engagement in the area of sustainability and business responsibility. So we really seek to bridge that gap between industry and academia, bringing the current business leaders a little closer to the next generation of business leaders who are our students and our young professionals. So it is an absolute privilege to be here, and I'm so thrilled to introduce our panelists here today, a really powerful group of women. So I'm going to hand it over to Tyler to get us started. If you'd like to just do your name, your title, your organization, and to throw something in that's a little fun, a different piece of media or something you've read recently that you'd like to share with everyone.
Hi, my name is Tyler Feigenbaum, and I work on ESG at Meta. I'm gonna do a podcast. My favorite podcast right now is Giggly Squad. I don't know if there's any gigglers out here. Yep, there we go. Favorite podcast, not related to the environment, but that's okay.
We need that though, so thank you. I'm going to look that up.
My name is Ashley Way. I'm an associate at the Estée Lauder Companies, and right now I'm not watching One Piece, but I'm really enjoying my current sports era. So baseball, football season has just started, so that's what I'm watching right now.
Amazing. Alex.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Lee. I lead our retail sustainability kind of interlock at Accenture. And I am also going to do a podcast. I have been listening to Normal Gossip. I don't know if anyone knows, but it's basically people talking about normal gossip. It's if you love gossip and like highly recommend.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Mueller-Gomez, and I do sustainability and climate research at Central Park Conservancy. So I'm in the nonprofit space, so a little different than my colleagues here or friends here. And I guess the book I'm reading right now is called Northwoods, and it's by Daniel Mason, and it takes place in like one plot of land in Western Massachusetts over many years. So basically since the start of colonization to now. So you kind of see how the forest and how people have related to it has changed over time.
Fascinating. A really great breadth of things here. And I'm just so excited for this panel for so many reasons, but especially we have such various careers here. And so we'll get into that in a moment, but it's really going back to the first discussion of you can do climate in any role, right? So if you're a nonprofit, if you're in a huge technology company, across all of the different sectors. So going off of that, climate careers can mean so many different things. It can mean carbon accounting, it can mean ESG reporting, it can mean nonprofit space and conservation. So I'd love to really set the stage and really dig a little bit deeper into this and contextualize what it means to work in climate. So I'm going to pass it to Michelle if you'd like to kick us off, and then we'll come back this way. What did the beginning of your career journey really look like? How'd you get started in sustainability, and what part of the climate jobs ecosystem do you currently work in? I know you touched on it, but to elaborate, please.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with where I work in now, conservation, I think, at a nonprofit organization that really offers what I think is like a public good and a democratic space for New Yorkers. But I started in philanthropy. I worked at the Rockefeller, or a project that the Rockefeller Foundation was running, where we were advising municipalities across the globe on how to develop climate adaptation and action plans. So I did that for a little bit. And I kind of felt like I sort of like a consultant was coming in, advising and leaving projects. And so I felt like I wanted to pivot a little bit and really gain some like experience in a site that was very specific, in a project that had a goal that I was really driving. And so like any good nonprofit employee, I have two hats. And so one is really like a classic sustainability role where I create baselines of our environmental impact and drive initiatives to reduce that. And so it might look, some of them, I think our actions are similar to what you guys are doing, but really in the built environment about decarbonization and even in our operations. And then another role is really advocating for public green spaces as one of the climate solutions. So how do we mitigate climate change through the trees that we all benefit from in public spaces, but also how does that help with adaptation and cooling the environment and with stormwater? We're in New York City, we're seeing a lot of extreme weather events. So how can we really advocate for those spaces to be part of that solution? Did I get it all?
Incredible. Yeah,
Okay.
you did great. That's
Okay.
great. Wow. If you want to hand it over to Alex, we'll come back down the line then. That'd be great.
All right, sounds good. So I think I'm going to start at truly the beginning of my career. So I did my undergraduate degree in supply chain and marketing, and I always knew that I wanted to work in retail. So I did all of my internships and all that at brands like Lucky Brand and at Macy's. And when I was doing my summer internship at Macy's, we had a internship project, and mine happened to be on sustainability. And I was blown away. I didn't know that you could have a job and get paid to do sustainability. No one told me that that was an option. I grew up in Southern California, like true crunchy granola family. And I thought it was just something that you did. I didn't realize it was something that you could work in. And so I came back my senior year and I was like, this is my life calling. This is what I want to do. And I tried to take as many classes as possible, but there was only one, and it was in green supply chain. And it was a graduate course. And I was like, I did everything that I needed to do to get into that class. And then I kind of went down this rabbit hole of going to different panels like this, trying to find folks that worked in the industry. And then I realized that there was maybe 2 jobs in New York that had the title of sustainability in it at the time. And this was about 10 years ago. So I actually went back to grad school. I went to the climate school at Columbia because I realized that I needed to kind of bridge that academic gap. Had a lot of background in business, did not know what a scope 1 emission was. And so did that. And as Al was mentioning earlier, kind of made my way. I did my grad program part-time, was at Macy's and then was at Gap. And I started identifying those stretch assignments. So I did a lot of digging, tried to find out who the head of sustainability was, who needed help on the team. And even in my role in inventory management, I was able to help do quantifications around water savings for some of our product lines. And so as I was doing that, I landed at PVH, the parent company of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, working on their in-house sustainability team, doing things from responsible sourcing on the human rights side, on the environmental side. Then kind of expanded over into ESG data and strategy on that end because we went public with some targets and then we realized we have to actually meet them. And so what is that going to look like? And what does the quantification and the reporting of that look like? And then I graduated with my master's and I was like, oh, I need to maybe try something different. And I went through this interview process at Accenture and I was like, I'm not going to go into consulting. This isn't who I am. But now I've been here for about 3 years and I've been very lucky to be surrounded by team members, but also by leaders who are willing to kind of help me spread my wings. And I've been able to do really incredible things for our retail clients in the realm of sustainability, both in disclosure, in supply chain sustainability and product, in just your kind of bread and butter strategy building as well. And it's been amazing. And 3 years in, I'm like, oh, maybe this is what I'll be doing for a little bit longer. So
That's
yeah.
incredible. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So we've heard nonprofit, we've heard consulting. I'll hand it to you, Ashley, if you want to kick it off with Estée Lauder Companies.
Yes. So as Al mentioned, I am the person that he hired after. So I started my sustainability career at the Estée Lauder Companies. So I graduated, or while I was still in school at Fordham, actually. So go
Yay,
Rams.
Fordham, go Rams.
I did an internship with the climate team, which sits under the sustainability team that Al mentioned. So, and he leads. So I worked for the climate team and interned for them, did a summer internship, did all the things that you're supposed to do while you're in college. And when I graduated, I actually got a role. I got my foot in the door by being Al's assistant. So I was his assistant for a year and I got a lot of insight and a lot of visibility into the sustainability world and kind of just like looked into what I could do within sustainability. And I definitely had a great mentor and also like a really good way of like looking into it because it was already in corporate sustainability. So in July, when something opened up, or a year ago, July, something opened up on the climate team. So I rejoined the team that I interned with, which was very fun. And I now work in climate data. So it's like right now we're doing greenhouse gas accounting, so super fun. But so that's kind of how I got here today. It's been like 3 years now, which is insane to see that time fly so quickly.
Incredible. Tyler, wrap us up here.
So I always wanted to be a lawyer. I went to school for environmental science and policy at the University of Maryland. And I was at my friend's house one day. It was my sophomore year of college. And my friend's mom is a lawyer. And she said, listen, Tyler, like, love you, but you cannot be a lawyer. You have the vocabulary skills of a fourth grader, and that's fine. There's a job out there for you. It is not law. So I took it seriously, of course, because I did realize that reading contracts probably wasn't for me. So with that being said, I got my first internship at the Long Island Railroad in environmental compliance. Again, not a job for me. I was going on the tracks. I had to be trained to walk on train tracks. It was very physical, wasn't for me. Year later, my next internship was at JetBlue on the corporate sustainability team, and that was in 2017. And at that time, I think that was the big transition from CSR to corporate sustainability. And then I had a really great boss at the time who she was going to these networking events. She was meeting a bunch of people, and people approached her and they're like, Sophia, like, you have to hear about this new thing, ESG. There's this thing called SASB and TCFD, and they're reporting frameworks that companies like JetBlue can report and align with, and it's going to be the new big thing. And so when I was interning there, I was leading that first report where it was a TCFD and SASB report. And when I went on LinkedIn at that time, there was maybe 5 people working on ESG, and that was in 2017. When now we're at Climate Week, and I feel like that's what everyone's talking about, and that was what, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. So kind of crazy to see that transition. After JetBlue, I went to Bloomberg for a year. I wanted to learn about the financial markets, which was great. It was super insightful. I think Al mentioned like making business cases for why you should be doing things, learning about the financial players and how they're using the ESG information was so important. And then 3 years ago, I found myself at Facebook, now Meta, on their sustainability team. And I think this touches on Al's point too, just getting your foot in the door. They didn't have an ESG team. We were a sustainability team under data centers. And to be honest, I didn't think they ever were going to have an ESG team until we had these great regulations. And my boss, Amanda, she's sitting in the front row at the time, got you. She really was a force, and she made the business case that we needed an ESG team. And that is where I am now at Meta. I've been here for 3 years, and our ESG team is 1.5 years old, toddler. We're still learning. And there's 2 of us, and we love it. And we're really focusing on getting ready for all these regulations.
Incredible. I mean, I started off saying we have a wide breadth of knowledge here, and I think it really goes back to the point of your career journey to sustainability can take so many different forms. You might know it while you're in college. You might have a reckoning where you realize this later, but this was we didn't really plan that. So really great job of sharing that. I would love to dig a little bit deeper into the specific skills. I think we're good. I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into the specific skills that each of you acquire. You all kind of touched on it, but Ashley, you're obviously in the consumer goods, prestige beauty industry. Tyler, you're working at one of the largest technology companies in the world. And Alex, you're in the consulting, working across so many different sectors. And then, of course, we have the nonprofit conservation space. They all require some similar skills, but also a little bit that are different. So what skill sets or experiences do you think have been most critical to your success? This is the question that we get a lot, especially at Fordham. Who wants to kick us off on this one? I'll let you guys.
I can start. Great. Yeah, I might as well. So I think there's 2 things. The first thing is being flexible. And I mean, I think we'll talk about this later, but your first job doesn't have to be your last job. So you're going to have to try a bunch of things until you find that one thing. And even at the company that you're at, you might love the company. And like for me, I was on the sustainability team, but I knew I wanted to be doing ESG reporting. So I had to kind of be flexible, work in sustainability for a little bit until I could get that ESG job. And then the other thing, which is just kind of funny, my dad sent me an article a few months ago from the Wall Street Journal talking about RIS. and how Gen Z was making their way up the corporate ladder, not because of their experience, but because of their riz. So I think it's really important to, always be yourself, have that charisma when you're in meetings, because your personality is going to get you so much further than you think it will. And I think that's been a super, invaluable skill that I've used.
Yeah. First off, we're going to define Riz as charisma. I
Charisma.
learned this recently.
I did too.
But very good point. And networking relationships. It's a really good point. Ashley, do you want to go next?
I think bouncing off that, while you're still in school, I think it's important to develop your communication skills. I think everybody talks about this, but while you're in school or like in your first internship or your first job, like learning how to talk to people who are your peers, I think that's a lot easier to do because you talk to them in school and you have group projects. But then also people who are like 2 to 3 levels above you, I think is kind of important at a certain point when you're talking to somebody and trying to explain something that they may not, but you work in all the time, but they may not do it. So kind of learning that, I think a great way is to talk to your professors and really get to know them and get to know how to speak to somebody who might be a little bit more knowledgeable in a certain area.
So I'm also going to kind of go on this flow here. So apart from like, oh, you should know how to calculate greenhouse gas emissions inventory. I think we all know that. I would say that, and perhaps this is because I'm more in the business of people in a sense as a consultant, but stakeholder management and contextualizing sustainability within the context of business is so, so, so critical. I think oftentimes I will walk into a room and they're like, oh, the sustainability person's here. And I wear that badge with pride, but I think the reality of the situation is, especially if you are trying to do sustainability in business, you're going to have to be able to speak the language of business. And I think at the time I was like really trying to get my foot in the door, the sustainability door. But the time that I did spend in my early career working on the quote unquote business side of retail has really become my superpower in a lot of ways, because I can sit across from a sourcing manager or from a designer or someone in product development, and I can speak their language. And I'm talking about sustainability initiatives, but I'm talking about it in their language. And so it doesn't become a scary thing, or it doesn't become I have to do this on top of all that I'm already doing. It's okay, well, I really just have to do this much more. And it makes it so much easier for us to really progress sustainability and think about it again, embedded and contextualized in what's already being done. So yeah.
I'll add one thing. I think we've talked a lot about like stakeholder engagement and business, but I think that being really comfortable with data and being able to manipulate it and use programming languages like Python or R or whatever language you want to write in. I think it's just really important to be able to automate processes and be really comfortable with data. And then I actually have a master's in environmental policy and planning, or city planning. And so when I was sort of in the sustainability role, I actually didn't have a lot of experience in like measuring greenhouse gas emissions and developing an inventory and kind of driving decarbonization, and was finding in my role I really needed to be able to do that. And so I did an upskilling program, and I did it with Voice Academy, who I think is a partner of Net Impact. They offer upskilling programs online, and they're really amazing. I loved the decarbonization program because I was able to like bring my greenhouse gas inventory that I had developed for my organization and get peer feedback on it and really drive on projects. So I think if you're like missing a skill set specifically in sustainability, there are upskilling programs. And so would recommend looking into that to get some of that real experience that you were talking about. You really need to be able to show that you can deliver some of these projects.
That's great. And I love that we kind of did both the soft and the hard skills. They're both so important. And at Fordham, we always say care of the whole person and really being well-rounded. So if you feel as though upskilling is important in the data side, that's where you have to focus. But if you're like, I really need to build out my people side of things, that's maybe where you should go. Great. As we all know here, and as you guys especially know, sustainability changes fast. The landscape's always constantly evolving. And I'm curious if you could give quickly a little bit of your insights of how do you stay up to date in your job, and especially just in the career landscape and sustainability landscape with different regulations and so many things changing. Ashley, since you have the mic, I might hand it to you.
Newsletters are really great. I think like every major journal, newspaper, everything, they all have like a green section. So like subscribe to all of them. And then also we have like a Teams group chat where everybody like sends articles and things. So it's great to like have a big team like we do. So we're able to like send it around and do like monthly meetings and learn about all the different innovations and current events that are happening. But not everybody has that. So newsletters.
That's great. Yeah, Michelle.
Two things. I think one, just surrounding myself with other like colleagues or friends that are working in this industry, I think it's really helpful. And then not to like plug Voice Academy again, but they do have a podcast that I listen to, and I find that it helps me understand what's happening in other industries outside of just, you know, the public sector or nonprofit.
Great. Tyler, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think specifically for me in my field in ESG, I like to look at the EU and what the EU is doing because they're about 10 years ahead of us. And chances are what they're doing now, we're going to have to do in 3 to 5 years. So looking at those large companies, the regulators there, the investors there specifically, whatever they're focusing on, that's what I should know about right now.
It's a great answer. Alex, you want to round us out here?
Okay, so I think I don't really have anything additional to add in terms of, you know, like the newsletters and all that, but I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record here, but what I would really encourage folks to do other than just looking at sustainability news is looking at business news. And this is if, you know, whatever industry you want to land in, whether that's retail or consumer goods or a nonprofit, again, it's really important to know what you're walking into and how you can plug sustainability into that. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had received the advice once of you need to know everything, which is a lot of sustainability, but then also your specific industry. You also need to know the inner workings of that too. So fantastic. I think all of you have started to touch on this next question of challenges. There's a lot of challenges stakeholder buy-in, getting people to care about you when you walk in the room. But, you know, I think having a climate career is really impactful, but I'd love to dig a little bit into the different challenges you guys experience and how you've really learned to navigate those.
Yeah,
Tyler.
sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, for me, like if you're interested in the ESG space, the largest challenge you are going to face right now is the polarization of ESG and the greenwashing movement and all of that that we're hearing about lately, especially in an election year. I think that's the biggest challenge we're facing, and just trying to silence that noise and really focus on the work that we're doing at our company. And you know, I'll touch on like greenwashing a little bit. I think the biggest challenge for me is that sharing with leaders and other teams that I work with, that ESG isn't just about the environment. It's about so many other things, like how we're treating our employees, DE&I, our value chain, things like that, and just being able to focus on that at the same time as focusing on the environment. And I think Al said it before, focusing on like your material topics, and those are normally tied directly to your business model.
Yeah, the new word I think is long-term value creation. With
Long-term
different
value
words.
for
You
your
gotta-
shareholders.
Yeah, figure out the words that work for the people you're talking to. Ashley.
I'm going to second everything you just said. I think it's different in a consumer goods industry, but it's pretty similar because the industry is also very similar in some ways. And then I think also like prestige beauty, we kind of do a balancing act between like luxury goods and environmental stewardship. Like there's a bit of a thin line there that we walk. So I think we try to embed sustainability and social impact into everything that we work on, but it's also like, I think our job as the climate team or as the sustainability team is to kind of push the business to try to do more. So we're trying. You'll see in the future if we succeed, but it depends. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges, so in the work that I do specifically, we focus primarily within the retail industry, I would say in fashion and food. And it's interesting, Tyler, what you brought up earlier about looking towards the EU, but even for our North American clients, there is either a footprint in the EU or they have headquarters in the EU. So it's not 5 to 10 years from now, it's right now. And a lot of that regulatory pressure is really putting a lot of pressure around ESG data. and technologies, especially when we're looking at the auditability of said data and the kind of rigor around that. So it's been interesting as we've been having these conversations about how you really need to kind of level up your data collection, your management, your intake, all of it, and then all the way through reporting. It's back to that. How do we make sure that you're not thinking about ESG or sustainability in this silo over here? It's not, oh, we need to bring on like one specific carbon platform. It's how does that look like within the context of your enterprise organization? And this is just data that we're speaking about, but then that kind of emanates into other areas. How is your sustainable sourcing practice being intertwined with your actual sourcing practices? So it kind of, again, goes back to making sure that you can speak the language and then make it really clear that sustainability cannot exist in silos anymore.
Excellent.
I'll add something briefly that's, I think, a little different than the challenges you guys face, but when you work in the built environment or in public spaces, often there is an initiative that will have a really large impact, but it's a piece of infrastructure that's invisible and you can't get a lot of support or financial support for it because it's not sexy or you can't really see it, you can't put your name on it. And so I think storytelling is really important around the environment. Like, how much water are you saving? How many communities can you protect by doing this action? And yeah, how can you tell a story? I think from a corporation, like, oh, look at this impact we made by supporting this project. So that's just a challenge we face.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate the storytelling component. When I was getting my MBA, I had read a book called The Story Wars, and it's really about the best story wins. And so make sure the sustainability folks are telling the better story so that the consumers and folks are interested in it. So I want to take a moment to let each of you brag a little bit and share recent wins and accomplishments. With sustainability and climate careers, there's a lot going on. And I think we all chose this because you're personally committed to it. There's purpose involved in it. There's values. And so sometimes there's a lot of challenges in sustainability, of course, but I would love to provide this platform to share recent wins you've had and just really share that as motivation for yourselves and for the folks in this room.
I can kick us off.
Great.
Not that I led this whole initiative, but with some colleagues, we really doubled down on our recycling practices in Central Park. So when you go to Central Park, please recycle your bottles and your cans that you bring in. We did an audit and actually, like, our paper was not clean enough to send to recycling. So we decided to really only focus on plastic and PGC. And so we had to do a big education campaign actually with our own employees. We have like 400 employees who work in the park, teaching them about, how to sort. And I can say that over the past year, we've doubled our recycling rates. So I don't know, that just feels like a win to me.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. So I think, when you go to public spaces in New York City, like, always just like check in and see, are they actually recycling or not?
Thank you for that. And I mean, that's where the motivation keeps coming from. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Okay. It's a tough one to follow. Man, okay.
Excitement.
No. Man, okay. It's I feel like extra tough in my space sometimes. I think you were kind of mentioning this, Michelle, of the reality of the work that I do is we go in, we help our clients set strategies or accomplish a specific thing, and then we kind of have to walk away. And also a lot of what comes out of it doesn't typically get publicized. And right, layers and layers of NDAs. So rather than speaking about one of my clients, I think I'm going to point to a thought leadership piece that I had the privilege of getting to co-author earlier this year. So out of Accenture and Fashion Makes Change and Women's Wear Daily, my two managing directors that I support, Kara Smith and Frank Zambrelli, they write a report every year called Scaling Solutions or Scaling Sustainability Solutions in Fashion. And in prior years, it has really been about, what can you be doing in carbon or climate or water? This year, we got to really flip the narrative on its head. And this is where I'm going to sound like a broken record again. And we thought about, well, what if I am in merchandising? What should I be doing to drive sustainability in the fashion supply chain? And we took a look at the different nodes in the ecosystem of fashion and thought about what can you be doing to drive sustainability forward? And it was so fascinating getting to be a part of that authorship process and the research process, speaking to a lot of subject matter experts in this space and a lot of brands in this space. And we're hoping to do it again next year. So it feels like a nice kind of thing that I get to say, like, oh, I am doing something in this space to drive sustainability.
Amazing. Yes. And if you haven't read the report, it's on the Accenture website, Fashion Exchange website. Please go read it. It's incredible. I've read it. Ashley.
Was about to ask, where can I find that? So thank you. I'm going to talk about something that I think Al touched on, which I think is really funny. Which was building a business case. So when I was an intern, actually, like 3 years ago, my manager at the time asked me to start building a business case for a climate transition plan and do some competitive benchmarking and all of that. So when I was an intern, I started doing some benchmarking and building a business case for climate transition plan. And then when I got hired full time, I helped support the management of it. And then they actually published it in 2022 alongside the SINS report, or the Social Impact and Sustainability report. And now it's its own full report that comes out in addition to the Social Impact and Sustainability report. So many acronyms these days. And so that's something that I feel like I planted a little seed and I watched grow and I watered it. So I think that's something, and I thought that was funny because Al brought up business cases. So I'm echoing him as usual.
Amazing. Amazing. Tyler, round us out.
All right, so big wins. I would say the fact that Amanda and I started the ESG team a year and a half ago, and our ESG team is just the two of us. And we do everything that a typical ESG team would do. So from the voluntary side to the regulatory side. So as we were talking about before, CSRD, the regulations, just the two of us are working on getting Meta compliant. We'll have to start reporting data in 2026 on 2025 data, which means we have to be setting up those systems to collect the data that's audit ready, ESG data governance. So I would say that doing all of that just as a team of two is huge. But another plug, we are actually expanding our team because two of us can't be doing this for much longer. So next week we will have 4 roles opening up: program manager, program coordinator, and then a audit and controls specialist. So think internal audit, setting up all those processes for compliance of the regulations, and then a ESG data specialist. So back to your point on Python, R, it's an important skill because I need that.
Well, first, let's give you a round of applause because that's incredible. I mean, wow. And then I want to congratulate everyone for coming to this room today, for now hearing the news firsthand. Really,
Yeah, this is hot off the press.
Yeah,
No one knows
so
this yet.
good on all
Don't
of
tell
you.
anyone until next week. Don't get me in trouble.
Incredible. So we have a few more questions left. So before we're going to go to the Q&A, but I do want you all to start thinking about questions. So we have a few more questions up here, but keep your head going there. First off, I want a quick round rapid fire of where does climate sit within your jobs, right? Or I'm not within your jobs, within your companies. So some it's immersed everywhere, but just for the folks in the room, if you want to rapid fire that'd be great.
Data centers, infrastructure, that's our largest impact. So that's where climate sits for us.
Great.
I think Al covered this, so I'm not going to repeat him.
It's a little different, I think, for us, but I would say within our clients, we see it typically most either in supply chain or legal or in finance. Yeah.
We try to embed it in everything we do.
That's the right answer. I think it depends, right? Like we're hoping it's embedded, but we're all getting there slowly but surely. And I think in hopefully 5 years, 10 years, it is just embedded. And I think if you're not familiar with Project Drawdown, they have a lot of resources looking at every job's a climate job. And going back to Al's point of, you could really engage in climate in any possible way, despite what your role might not have it in it, right? Looking ahead, so imagine we all have a magic ball in front of us. What's exciting for you as you start to look at the trends happening in the EU or across different sectors? Where are you most excited to see where the sustainability and ESG space is really going to start headed?
I'm happy to go first.
Great.
So I think we've seen a lot of just kind of waves of how sustainability and ESG is matured over the last 10 or so years even. And I think we're really at an interesting point right now where a lot of what is being driven, whether that's in reporting or initiatives, is being driven through regulatory pressure. And I think the reality of the things here, and this is just a me opinion, is there's some fear behind it. And I was having a conversation with someone from a brand this morning, and they said something that really stuck with me. And it's only been like a few hours, but they were encouraging me to start bringing the joy back again. And I think that's like why everyone gets into sustainability, right? Like there's something like passionate about it. And I think people get into it because they care. It's why I got into it. And it's so easy in the day to day to forget that because you're like, oh my gosh, like CSRD, EUDR, FISM. It's like, yeah, it's so important. It's all important. And we want to stay compliant and we want to make sure that, we are doing the work that needs to get done. But bringing the fun and the joy and the innovation back to it is something that I'm hoping that we can start seeing happen more in the next few years.
I love that. I think that's incredible. And I think, that's why we're here at Climate Week. It comes once a year. We get really excited and it helps reignite us to be connected with different people that are like-minded. So bring the joy back into it. I think that's a great way to end the week. So think about that tomorrow and the end of the week. Ashley.
So I think I have to plug my generation. So as a Gen Z person, I think it's very nice and very important that like all of us are kind of more interested in it. So I think we're really pushing our purchasing power and trying to push companies to do more. So that's the thing I'm most excited about.
So I am excited about the regulations, and that does fuel me and excite me. But unrelated to that, what I've been most excited about within the past year and even next year and so on is the fact that I can tell my dad, I told you so. He comes from like the manufacturing background, business, like stereotypical business guy from New York. When I told him I wanted to do sustainability in 2018, so not even that long ago, he said, "You'll never get a job. You'll never make money. You'll never get a job." And here I am. So I think my favorite thing, and I will continue to look forward telling him, "I told you so."
That's great.
Should I do that? Follow that. Okay. I would just say like I'm definitely following the reporting around like biodiversity and nature, and I am also excited about regulation, and so I think there's a lot to come, but would just keep on pushing nature-based solutions and following the supply chain.
Yeah, we didn't even touch biodiversity and there's so many different areas we could get into. But I think just that shares, there is so much to be excited about in sustainability. And I just value all of your perspectives there. So we have a lot of young professionals in the room today. We have some students in the room, and I think they're all here because they're excited about what's next. So my last question before we turn it over to Q&A is, what advice would you give to someone who's either a young professional or someone that's a student? Give them some really rigorous advice of where to go and how would you guide them?
I'll make it short and sweet. Fake it till you'll make it. I think you know so much more than you think you know. And when you're in meetings or when you're networking, chances are you know more than the person you're talking to knows. And as long as you're confident and you sound right, it'll always work for you. So fake it till you make it.
Great. Ashley.
I agree. Speak with confidence. You can convince anybody. No, I'm just kidding. Don't rule the world. But I think speaking with confidence, and then also the other thing is you don't need to know the answer to every question. I think you can take some time to think about it, and like instead of giving a half-worded answer, you can come back to them and give a full answer after you've like done some research. Something that like my first manager told me that has stuck with me every single time is you don't need to answer the question right then and there all the time.
I think I'll maybe veer a little bit more to some practical things that people could potentially take from here. I'm a Net Impact alumni, both out of my grad program, and then also there was a campaign that you guys had run a few years ago called Wear It Wise, so it was in sustainable fashion. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at what resources are available to you. One of the reasons why I started getting involved in Net Impact is very similar to what Al was mentioning earlier, of like creating a top 10 organizations that you want to work for. An advice point that I got from someone as I was looking to switch careers from retail business to retail sustainability was take a look at different job postings of your dream job that might exist out there, and look at what those different qualifications or skill sets that they're looking for. And it might be someone that's like, levels above you, but it gives you a little bit of a North Star of then what skill sets you want to go, and whether those are technical skill sets or soft skill sets that you want to go and practice. And then there are avenues like Net Impact or like others where you can start flexing those even outside of your day-to-day job. So that's one thing. And then another thing that I would kind of impart here, and it's advice that I really struggle taking, is, again, I think this goes back to those that work in sustainability. We're usually in it because we're really committed to it on a personal level. So the lines between your personal life and your professional life often get blurred. I know I'm very guilty of it. And I got this advice from one of my bosses recently of it's okay to drop some balls as you're going along. I think we try to do a lot. We're really committed into getting to the right job, the right role at the right company. And it can take time, and it's okay if it takes time. If someone had told me this 3 years ago, I'd have been like, get out. So I know it's easier when you're in a role or in a position to be sharing that, but I do think that it's important for us to remember that it's okay. It's okay if it takes time, and it's okay if we stumble along the way. Sustainability is weird. It's evolving day by day, and there is no perfect trajectory. So breathe, take time, you'll get there.
Great. Practical and then a little bit of reflective. That's great.
Yeah. I think just like reflecting a lot on what you were saying, but building a network and a community, whether that's Net Impact or a program like Voice Academy, I think, being surrounded by that and really letting what you're wanting to do kind of, I don't know, encompass everything that you're driving towards. And so I think really focusing on that. And then something else that, Yvonne from Voice Academy really taught me is leading with empathy. Like, don't make it hard for somebody to figure out your story. Be really clear and think of it like, by being empathetic and letting them know my story, they're not having to do the work and figure it out. So be really clear with that and understand what their problems are and what solutions you bring to solving their problem. I think when you're going out there and pitching your services or yourself.
This is great. I think you all came for like specific skills and we left with joy and empathy, but it's so important. It really is. And it's, you can get the hard skills is my opinion, but the soft skills really matter. And I think when I speak with students at Fordham University, Gabelli, I'm always like, get out there and network. Your network is so incredibly important. And so you're here at the Nest. And I think that's a great starting point if you haven't started networking yet. So we're going to move to Q&A. So we're going to hand it over to you. We have lots of questions already. If we could just grab. Great. Thank you, Animesh. All right, you can go right over here. We'll get to both, so don't worry. We have a decent amount of time for questions.
Hello, thank you so much for being here with us. So people's stories of how they got their first climate job vary greatly, and they can feel very opaque in nature. If you're willing to, could you specifically share how you were able to get your first roles within climate and sustainability? Did you, like very tactically, did you go on a job board and find it? Was it a recommendation you got from a former supervisor? Was it a job that was never even posted, but you found out about it, got the intro, and that's how it's in? It seems like there's never a direct way of getting it, unlike other jobs. And so if you're willing to share that, I think it'd help a lot of us. Thanks.
Great question. Who wants to take that?
So for my first true corporate sustainability job, it was at JetBlue, and I interned there. And I found the internship just through like LinkedIn or Indeed, one of the job postings. But why I specifically got that job was instead of studying the business and what they're doing, I studied the hiring manager. So I was going to report to the chief sustainability officer, and I studied her and I understood what she was most interested in and what she would probably be looking for. And she told me this after why I got the job was because I quoted something that she said on a panel. And that's how I got the job. So it's studying the person that you're interviewing with. I think that's just as important as knowing the company.
I'm happy to maybe just add a little bit to that. Definitely agree with like know who you're speaking to. I also want to add, so before I joined Accenture, I was at a parent company of Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger. And I'm not exaggerating here. I think I did about 40 interviews, and then I went to 18 final round interviews before I got this job. And it's tough. And I think for those of you who are looking for jobs, final round interviews are like you're going through 3 rounds and then you're doing like a case or a presentation. It's like a full-time job in and of itself. So if you're in this like nebulous area where you're doing interview after interview, you're not alone. And I know it's super shitty. I don't know if I can say that, but it is. And just, keep powering through. I would say it's also genuinely a mix of like do the LinkedIn or like Indeed, like go out there and just like start throwing your resume out. What I did when I was looking for climate jobs was I basically had a template for a resume. So I had like a long list template, and then there were certain tasks or certain like qualifications that I would do a lot of bullet points in, and I would kind of like plug and play based on what industry or what kind of role I was applying for. And I did the same for cover letters. And so you're not doing like 3 hours per application, but you're able to get a little bit of a customized approach depending on the job. So it's not like you're throwing out 40 resumes that all look the same and then they're like, oh, and then networking, I would say, is really, really huge. The first climate job that I did get was actually through a peer in my grad program. She didn't get me the job, but she got me the interview. So I would say continue doing what you're doing, basically. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Got one over here. Great.
Thank you. Gray Hatchett from Cornell Johnson's Business School. So Tyler mentioned at one point that you can often just look to Europe to see what we're going to be doing in about 5-10 years. And I think Alex mentioned that it's also very important for us to be able to speak corporate speak to actually get things done. So I'm coming in having worked in a Swiss bank in Europe before. And they were very into this idea of double materiality, which is basically, for people who don't know, what we do changes the environment, or how we do business changes the environment, and how the environment changes how we do business. So double part question. One, how do you think that we can push businesses to start thinking in that same manner here? Because I feel like that's a somewhat foreign concept. And two, in the meantime, how can we quantify the effects of acting in an environmentally conscious way, such that it's not just it's the right thing to do, but it will have a net positive effect on the bottom line?
Thank you. Who wants to respond?
So on double materiality, it's an excellent point. It's great that you have experience working with that. So for every company that has operations or entities within the EU, as long as they hit a certain threshold of OPEX, CAPEX, or employees, they will be subject to the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, alphabet soup of ESG. And a part of that regulation will require companies to do a double materiality assessment. So luckily at Meta, we will have to report, like I said, in 2026. So we've already done this double materiality assessment. And I think a lot of companies, you'll probably be surprised, in the US have also already done their double materiality assessment. If they haven't done it already and it hasn't been published, it's because they're still working on it. And so I think you will see a lot more companies thinking about materiality from that double perspective, the dual lens. Does anyone-
Yeah. Totally agree with you. A lot of our clients are already doing DMAs or again, more acronyms,
Alphabet
right?
soup.
Yeah. But I will say, I think it comes back to like what you said, like the ability to speak corporate speak, right? So it's contextualizing sustainability impacts within the realm of business, as Al and Ashley were mentioning, around business cases. So it's something that we do a lot as well for our clients of, okay, well, why should I care about waste as someone that works in warehousing? Well, if you think about the way that, waste might be moving through your warehouse, and we're thinking about initiatives like cross-docking and eliminating, lead time between even the movement of goods within your warehouse, that's hours worked. That is space in your warehouse. That's like the actual movement of goods. And once you start linking things to dollars, money does speak. And so it's not like the ideal way that we would like to talk about sustainability, but it's certainly a way that has been helping at least progress the conversation to the point that it needs to get to.
Thank you.
Look at this side of the room for a moment too. Thank you.
Hi, guys. My name's Alexander. I work at the American Hellenic Institute. We're a foreign policy think tank in Washington, D.C. But before foreign policy, my background was on climate policy. So I've really been looking at the intersection between these two. If America met all its climate goals tomorrow, we'd still feel the consequences if the rest of the world doesn't. Now, I really liked how you guys pointed to how Europe is a leader in this area internationally, but I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts and strategies on the other side of the coin. How do we get countries like Russia, China, Iran that have kind of brushed this under the rug to take a more active approach, given, how much they contribute to the global problem?
A hard question. I don't know if we have
Sorry.
policy experts, but I'm curious if anyone does have a response to it.
I mean, yeah, I studied international development at undergrad and have worked in international nonprofits, but I'm not a diplomat. But I think we should also think about the responsibility. Like, we have a long history of emissions in the United States, and we need to hold that responsibility and lead through that. So I think instead of pointing fingers, let's clean our own plate.
I agree. Great answer. And I mean, great questions too of how do we expand this, but I think going in our own backyard first and then seeing how we can push policy. And, everyone's doing their own aspect of sustainability. And so if you're working in policy, that's a directive that you really need to take up. But fantastic question. Thank you. I think we have one back there. Great.
Hi everyone, I'm Shubha. I've graduated with a Master of Science in Advanced Sustainable Design and have worked as an architect back in India. And driving upstream Scope 3 emissions in the built environment was something that I dealt with and would like to know from you. How do you drive influence across the value chain or incentivize in terms of driving, because the entire value chain needs to be a part of reducing the Scope 3 emissions. So would love to know a few tips on doing that.
Ashley, I'm going to look at you. I think this is your area.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. That's a great question. That's a question we're asking ourselves too. I think as a company, I think what I'm working on right now is a lot of the start of it. So at the beginning is like data collection and like getting accurate data. So like what we're currently working on right now is like our inventory. And we find that especially with Scope 3, the value chain, it's so much harder to get like accurate data that's not estimated. That's from the suppliers or from raw materials or et cetera. So that's our first step. And at least that's my first step that I'm touching. And then I think there's always opportunities for emissions reductions projects. And I know the greater team is also working on that. So I'm going to shout out the Climate Transition Report. You can definitely check it out and see what else we're doing.
This is really like kind of time opportune. It's something that we've been talking a lot with our clients, especially because Scope 3 makes up so much of any retailer's emissions. And I was at a supplier roundtable recently, and it was really interesting because it's not to point fingers by any means, but I think oftentimes we'll see panels or we'll see convenings, and those that actually need to make impact or to contribute data don't get a seat at the table. And so as we're thinking about upstream, value chain emissions, the suppliers and the raw material providers, they need to be equal bearing at the table with the folks that are asking for the decarbonization efforts. And I think the same kind of sentiment goes towards like if we're asking for accurate data or if we're looking for whatever that data sharing looks like, that also needs to be a collaborative effort of, well, then what are you doing with my data or what's your data? And so it really does need to be a true two-way conversation. And I'm seeing a lot of that shifting already across our industry. And I hope we, continue to lean into that because it's not going to happen by us standing here being like, why aren't you doing better?
Excellent. Do we have time for one more question or are we? One more, oh golly. Um, Animesh, we'll go to the lovely woman in the blue over here.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all the insight. It's really helpful and inspiring. I'm Jennifer. I'm a management consultant, and I've worked on a few like sustainability projects related to target setting and sustainability strategy. But I guess like a lot of other people here, really interested in learning more about like how to find more roles that are like more focused on climate. So my question is, do you have any networking tips, whether it's seeing someone that has like a really cool path and like reaching out to them, learning about what they did, or if it's more specific, like Tyler, you mentioned like researching like the person who was maybe like the hiring manager for your posts, like any tips or thoughts there?
We were just talking before this kicked off, and I think a lot of people in the sustainability space get a lot of LinkedIn requests, a lot of emails, and it's hard to make time. I always want to pay it forward because other people made time for me. But I think we talked about some like rules, like I think connecting, like if you have mutual connections, naming that makes it really hard to say no. Uh, I like worked with somebody who was like, I wait until I get 3 follow-ups and then I respond. So I don't really want to live by that. But yeah, if you're gonna follow up with me 2 times, like I might respond. What was the third one?
I would say, like, again, just because of like sheer volume, like it's a small space, but it's also such a big space. So anywhere you can add like a little bit of a personal touch. So it's not like I feel like you're just like connect, and like being like, okay, literally anyone talk to me. If it feels like you actually want to talk to me. And I think that kind of goes to what Tyler was saying, like she like really learned about her hiring manager and it wasn't just like, I want a job, I want to work with you. I think that definitely adds a bit of an edge.
Amazing. Oh, one more, let's go.
I think also using your university network. So I'm gonna plug Fordham, but I got my first internship through Fordham. So I think that like using like groups you're already a part of is really important. So if you're joining a club, a LinkedIn group, a Facebook group, if you find somebody that works in the industry, I think joining groups that they're already a part of will help you.
Great. I'm going to piggyback off that. I know we're at time, but that's such an important part of, I will say I get lots of requests. And if they're like, oh, I went to Fordham with you, because I'm also a Fordham alum, or oh, I went to Bard with you, or maybe not with you, but years later, I always answer. Of course, it's a community. And so really leveraging the community you have and then asking those in your community to continue to spread the word and see if they can connect you with others as well. So I know we had more questions, but we're not fully done. There's going to be a networking portion after, and I believe our panelists will be able to stick around for a little bit. So if you didn't get your question answered, don't worry, they're still around. I have a few announcements. I'm going to read this, so please forgive me. First and foremost, I want to thank our panelists. This was a pleasure and a privilege, so thank you. Second, I want to thank our sponsors. We would not be able to do this today without them. So a huge thank you to the Estée Lauder Companies for really allowing this to happen today here in person. As we mentioned, we have an internship pipeline with the Estée Lauder Companies and such a relationship we really value. So thank you. To all those that are streaming online, a huge thank you to Meta for really making the online virtual component possible, bringing people from around the world to make sure that the community here is not just in this room, but really going far and wide to bring Climate Week NYC everywhere. Okay, now to my announcements. Sorry about that. Okay, so I said we're not done. So to our in-person audience, I left my pin over there, but if you did not get a Net Impact pin, please grab one. It's great, to have different people around the community today, and you'll see the pin and say, oh, and that's a great way to network, to know who is in the room today. So please grab a pin if you have not. Also, if you're not part of a Net Impact chapter, I really encourage you to join one. I was a part of my Net Impact chapter while I was getting my MBA at Bard. And it's just a great community, and our Fordham community is incredible. So please join those professional and university chapters. These events are so impactful because we get to hear from people. We have joy and empathy and so many wonderful things. But it's really after this week that keeps the momentum going until next week, next year, when we need to come back to rejuvenate ourselves. So I want to plug Net Impact for celebrating their 30th anniversary here at Climate Week. They'll be doing a celebration networking mixer, back to the networking, important, at Hudson Hound this evening. It's at 7:30. It's this evening, 6:30. You should have received an email. If not, you can grab one of us and we'll give you the information. You just stroll on down the High Line and you'll be there. So it's a nice little stroll as you get there. I also want to give a quick plug. So the Responsible Business Center has an event for exclusively MBA students tomorrow. If you haven't heard about, please come find me. I'd be delighted to get you there. And we have lots of events at the Responsible Business Center throughout the year, one happening in October. So it doesn't have to just be Climate Week. There's many different things happening. So I encourage you to stay involved with us. Okay. The last thing, and I'm done, is there's also a Green Jobs Pavilion. It closes at 6 o'clock this evening on the 3rd floor. Another great way to figure out how to network. They have lots of great resources, so I highly encourage you heading over there. The hallway is where we're going to be networking, right? And we have QR codes here to stay connected, lots of information. But I just want to give a huge shout out to the teams that made this possible today. We would not be here without the Responsible Business Center team, the Estée Lauder teams, the Net Impact team, and the Meta teams to really make this possible. So thank you. Thank you to everyone in this room. We could have a discussion, but it's more interesting when you're all here with us. So thank you all for showing up. And on behalf of all of our sponsors, Responsible Business Center and Net Impact, have a great rest of your Climate Week. Thank you so much.